When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
Go to get your game on.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Eagles fans, welcome back to another edition of Football 24/7. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II, and I'm joined by none other than our Philadelphia Eagles insider, John McMullen. Make sure you guys smash that like button, and also make sure you guys are please subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. And on top of that, make sure you guys always check out my man McMullen on Burge 365 with his partner in crime, Jody McDonald. They do an amazing job from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time, covering your Philadelphia Eagles, giving you the objective perspective. And that's what we always appreciate from John. He always gives us the nitty gritty in spite of any emotion. And we appreciate that because I'm the emotional one in this, on the show. I'm the passionate one, right? I'm going to give you the fan pseudo enthusiast perspective, and John's going to give you the straight up perspective, no chaser, straight shot, no chaser. So I appreciate John for always doing this thing. John, how are you feeling, my friend?
I'm doing well. Still having some internet issues, a lot of storms here in South Jersey. You're safely ensconced in Texas, so you missed it.
We had a storm a couple days ago, a little bit of a sideways, storm. It got a little tricky.
Yeah, well, hopefully everything starts clearing up, but still a lot of people, even across town where I live, don't have power, so it could be worse.
Definitely, and I appreciate you for managing to take the time out to work with me today, in spite of your circumstances. So let's get right to it. Let's not waste any time, Eagles fans. Eagles versus Buccaneers, the wild card matchup that we've all been waiting for. But it's a situation where most fans aren't that optimistic, or they aren't as optimistic as they once were. Obviously, the Eagles limped into the playoffs. Many questions, many concerns, many unknowns when it comes to this team. John, what's the overall temperature of this Philadelphia Eagles team at the Novacare Complex?
We finally got in there today. It was interesting. They had a walkthrough scheduled today. They changed it to a practice, and which, last time they did that, they claimed it was no big deal. And all of a sudden we found out on game day that they changed defensive play callers. So, the antenna kind of raised. What's going on? This time, other than obviously this is a struggling football team going into the playoffs. But Jalen Hurts was limited in practice, talked to us about his finger, said probably wasn't a good idea to go back in that game. Maybe a little bit more banged up than people were assuming, and we'll see how things shaked out. But I got to tell you, I think Tampa's the worst team in the playoffs overall. Maybe Pittsburgh, you could argue, over on the AFC side from a talent perspective. I'm talking about. So
Mhm.
from that situation, it's a good matchup. But all of a sudden, Reed Blankenship wasn't able to practice today. AJ Brown wasn't able to practice today. So, if you tuned into Birds 365 this morning, I was pretty confident the Eagles were going to win the game. I've gotten less confident after seeing that practice report and who was available. Now, still early. Games on Monday, you have the extra day. I certainly expect everybody to be out there. Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Reed Blankenship. But are they going to be 100%? That's the bigger issue, and got a lot of questions after today.
I mean, no one's going to be 100%, right, John? This is the NFL at this point in the season. Everyone's bandaged up. They got, they have some kind of sling helping them get from point A to point B, whatever it is. These
Well,
guys
that's
are.
true. That's true, but this is more than that. So you're right. At this time of year, everybody's banged up, but these guys are legitimately injured, and they're going to try to fight through it. And that's a concern to me. That's a concern that could be an issue. And obviously, if you don't have, number one, your quarterback at an optimal level, and certainly, Marcus Mariota was taking some reps with the first team because Jalen was limited. So that's not good. That's not good.
How do you think that impacts the game plan? How do you think that impacts what they try to accomplish in Tampa Bay? Let's just start there.
Well, if you can't throw the football because of your finger, you can't throw the football. So, I mean, it's becoming a bigger issue than I thought. Let's put it that way. So, we got to wait and see where he is, but it's a middle finger on his throwing hand. Everybody saw it. Um, the quote today from Jalen, I'll pull it up real quick, was obviously leaving that game and attempting to go back in that game probably wasn't physically the best idea. He had a glove on his right hand. We're only in there for a very short period of time, but in that short period of time, I saw him throw the football once in a ball security drill, and it was about 4 feet to one of the other quarterbacks. And I mean, if he can't throw the football, that changes everything.
This Philadelphia Eagles team has been going through many trials and tribulations, especially over the past several weeks. Not just injury related, but the ups and downs with the with the production, or the inconsistent production, however you want to slice it. Questions starting to arise amongst the coaching staff about guys and their, if they're qualified, and it's just been an overall rough go of it for the Philadelphia Eagles. You couple this with falling out of favor in the conference. Now you're a wild card team. Speak on just how far this team has fallen and where they are as compared to where they were and the team that we thought they would be coming into the season.
Well, the expectations, I mean, I don't know. I picked them to win 12 games. They won 11. For I think the 10-1 start got people a little bit too hyped up, which is kind of ironic because everybody during that 10-1 start was complaining about style points and they weren't winning the right way, but they were pretty fired up despite that, evidently. But you don't expect it. I said if they started 7-3 and finished with 11 wins, I think it would be better than that 10-1 start and then collapsing down the stretch. Would have been the same record, but people would have felt a little bit better about it.
It's kind of like Buffalo, right? They kind of were 6-6 at one point,
exactly.
and then they just caught fire.
Yeah, and so they go in hot. You want to go in hot. I'm not downplaying that. The Eagles aren't playing well. I mean, I think they should beat Tampa. But again, if guys
That's
are healthy enough to play,
should is the operative word. Should is the operative word because you look at this team on paper, they're clearly better than Tampa Bay. There's no question.
yeah,
But
exactly.
overall,
And
have the
Slay,
Philadelphia
you talk
Eagles.
about me being honest. Slay's honest, and he said it might be good today for the Eagles to be on the road. He said they get the booing fast in Philly. Don't need the booze. I mean, so from his perspective,
That's interesting. I didn't think about it from that perspective.
yeah,
Could this road game actually work in their favor because they're playing under less pressure amongst their own? Interesting.
I think it could against Tampa, but the problem is, you don't want to play 3 games on the road, and that's where they are. They made the Super Bowl twice in 6 years. They didn't play a road game. There's a correlation to that. So I think it could help them in the short term. Long term, I don't think it's going to be helpful. And if your expectations were the Super Bowl again, they're probably going to end up underachieving. And it was a disappointing end to the regular season. There's no way to shake that. But I wonder if they won the Arizona game, they won the Seattle game. If they would have won those 2 games, not against good teams, they should have won those 2 games. But they're both 1-score games. They had an opportunity to win. They came up just short. I think even people would have been a little bit better had they won those 2 particular games.
Without question. Without question, John. If they beat the Cardinals, right? If they beat the Giants the second time, I'm willing to bet.
Well, I'm not even counting the Giants game because they didn't even show up in that game. They had a chance. They had a chance to win Seattle and Arizona.
Right. Exactly. That's what I meant to add into the Seattle game. Excuse me. The Seattle game. You win those games. The city, everyone, even us as people who digest the game, we're looking at this team totally different. Yet we see a team who's struggling to beat the bad teams, struggling to beat teams that aren't even in the playoffs. They lost their final 3 losses came against teams that are not in the playoffs. And just coming at you from the Eagles perspective, Eagles fan perspective, right? I'm supposed to believe that this team can go into Tampa and win under these current circumstances?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised how scared some of the fan base is of Tampa. I mean, if you can't beat Tampa,
no, I don't think it's about Tampa though, John.
That's well, I think I don't think it's about. From my perspective, I don't think it's about the Eagles. Tampa's so bad they should be able to beat them. That's not a playoff team. That's not a legitimate playoff team. Like all NFL teams, they have really good players. Antoine Winfield Jr. is a tremendous, tremendous player. One of my favorite players in the NFL. Mike Evans is going to the Hall of Fame. They have good players. Every NFL team has good players. You saw the New York Giants with Saquon Barkley, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau. Even the worst teams have good players. You saw it in Arizona with Kyler and John Connor and Budda Baker making plays. It's not like college. Everybody's got good players. But look, if you can't beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a playoff game, you deserve to go home. I mean,
do me a favor really quickly. Do me a favor, John. And you bring up a good point. If you can't beat the Buccaneers in the playoffs, you deserve to go home. Absolutely, rightfully so. Let me ask you this question. Rank these 4 teams. 1 being the best, 4 being the worst. Seattle, Arizona, Giants, Tampa.
Seattle's the best. Tampa the second best. Arizona Giants are the worst. Giants are the worst because of the quarterback situation. Although, Tyrod Taylor, when they went back to Tyrod Taylor, they were at least serviceable versus Tommy DeVito. But yeah, I would put Arizona slightly ahead of them. But Seattle is the best of that group.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, and I like that order. I agree with that order wholeheartedly. The Eagles lost to 3 of those teams. We said Seattle was better, so we'll roll with that. But it doesn't
the Seattle game has nothing to do with the Tampa game. The Tampa game's got nothing to do with the Arizona game. People acknowledge this is a week-to-week league, yet the same people say, well, you lost to Seattle in week whatever, so how can you beat Tampa Bay? Or you lost there, so how could you beat
Yes.
Tampa Bay? Has
Yes.
nothing to do with it. I mean, you can go back to week 3. I'll say the same thing. The Eagles dominated Tampa Bay. Maybe their best game of the season. Has nothing to do with this game. Nothing. This is not a series. This is not, the NBA best of 7, baseball, the World Series. These are standalone games, and people should learn from the week-to-week nature of this league that there is no transitive property. There is no, and in fact, you can go every year, and they do it every year, and go Carolina won 2 games. I don't even remember who they beat, but they beat so-and-so. So-and-so beat so-and-so, and you end up with the Super Bowl champions. There is no transitive property in the NFL. So what they did against Seattle means nothing when it comes to Tampa Bay. What they did last week against the New York Giants means nothing against Tampa Bay.
You bring up a good point, John. And you every time you say that, you're calling me out on the carpet, because I am one of those people who says this is a week-to-week league, right? I am one of those people. But I'm also one of those people who acknowledge that this team has struggled against A, B, and C. How can I expect them to do well against D?
Well,
when A, B, and C
where
are-
it does matter is you don't want to go into the playoffs struggling, and they are struggling. So it could have been against San Francisco, Dallas, good teams, or against bad teams they lost to. There is, a human nature to it. You want to have confidence. You certainly want to have some momentum going into the playoffs. The Eagles have none of this, so that part of it's real. But as Slay kind of pointed out, maybe getting away from Philadelphia, getting away from the negativity, maybe that helps. That the nature of the playoffs, the one and done aspect of the playoffs. If you can't get focused for that, you're not going to be able to get focused at all.
Well,
the veteran nature of this team, the experience of this team, these guys have played in the playoffs consistently now. The veterans, all of that trends towards the Eagles' favor. But I'm concerned about the health aspect of it. I am.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. The health aspect is definitely, it trumps everything else. But also, although, everything you're saying, very true, this team has been beating themselves week after week after week. And you're right. What happens against the Seahawks and the Cardinals and all those other teams, they're independent opponents with different game plans, different matchups, so on and so forth. All those things go into it. That's what makes this game, beautiful, right? There's consistencies and there's contradictions, and there's moments where contradictions are king. There are moments when consistency is king. So, it just seems like with this Philadelphia Eagles team right now, it hasn't really been about the opponent. It's been about what they haven't been able to do. And I think it goes back to your point about the expectations. And also, you had them winning 12 games. They won 11. By definition, they've underachieved to your expectation by 1 game, but still.
Yeah, and Jody has that, when we play the win and the loss game, which is kind of silly in April, but we play it like everybody else. But he's got this exercise where you pick what you think they're going to go, and I picked 12-5, and then you have to say, if you had to go 1 down or 1 up, which way would you go? And that gives you a better indication of what you think the ceiling might be. And I went down. To 11. He went up to 13. I went down for the same reason as has kind of manifested late. Lost the defensive coordinator, lost 5 defensive starters. Now, at times, speaking to the week-to-week nature of the league, starting with week 3 in Tampa Bay, they look pretty darn good defensively. Out in Los Angeles against the Rams, they look pretty darn good. The Jets, they lost the game, but they look good defensively. Miami, they look
look-
good. At that
Right.
point, you're talking October 22nd, they're 6-1. And, because we do the show every weekday, and, oh, Desai's better than Jonathan Gannon. Desai's going to get head coaching interviews, Jody would say. And, bang, the attrition starts. Washington Commanders, which they struggle with, Dallas Cowboys. And it's interesting. We now know they're 8-1, and this is Nick Sirianni's biggest mistake. They're 8-1 going into the bye week, and that's where he first started thinking about making a change at defensive coordinator, which is astonishing to me. So I'll say it again for the people listening. Nick Sirianni's not getting fired. He's not getting fired. But for those who want him fired, it seems they're hyper-focused on the offense. If you want to make an argument, make the argument on the other side, because in hindsight, making that move from Sean Desai, not that Sean was doing a great job, but he's a young coordinator, first year here, second year overall, still learning on the job. Yeah, it wasn't pretty at times, but that's sort of how you get through these things. And we now know it was at that point also he took away third down autonomy from him. So forget about 10-3 when they actually demoted him. This all started back when they were 8-1. That is an absurd panic move by the head coach.
Yeah, I would have to agree, especially knowing now that that's when the first domino fell for Sean Desai. That is a panic move, in my humble opinion. And I think obviously in hindsight, we look at that move as it was highly questionable even in the moment because of the timing and the execution of it. But now your defense is essentially playing worse. And you're asking them to learn new terminology or just new places on the field, and it's not a situation that was optimal. On top of that, you fired him after he ran through that gauntlet and had to go against Niners and Cowboys, and now you decide to fire him then.
Oh, it was the Cowboys, and he didn't get fired; he got demoted. But,
well, I'm sorry, not fired,
but
demoted.
He will be out the door
of course
whenever the season ends.
They could have gave him a shot to bounce back against Seattle, and you and I talked about this, John.
Oh, yeah.
It was clearly, in my opinion, this is me playing the conspiracy theory role now. This is independent of John. I believe that they waited until that week because they already started thinking about this at 8-1. At that point, they were just now thinking about timing. I think they waited until the schedule got at its easiest point, and then to shift to Matt Patricia to make it appear as if the decision would be a right one. And in reality, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I mentioned the same thing at the time, not the conspiracy part of it, but the part that I said, the Eagles defense was going to get better over the final 4 games of the season, was baked in because of the opponents. Well, it didn't get better. It did in Seattle. They were okay until the end of the game. But, I mean, the Giants, and it was good in the first half against the Giants, but that's because of Tommy DeVito. As soon as Tyrod Taylor came in, they couldn't stop him. And you say, Tyrod's a legitimate NFL quarterback. Tommy isn't, to be blunt. And Arizona obviously has a very good quarterback. And then you had Taylor again, and they couldn't stop him again. And while Taylor's a legitimate NFL quarterback, he's not a legitimate starting NFL quarterback. He might be maybe back end if you're listing the 32 best quarterbacks in the world.
Yeah.
He might
back end starter, definitely top tier number 2.
Yeah, exactly. He might squeak into the top 32, but he's not going to be, he's not a great quarterback. And they somehow got worse. And I think it's because of, and by the way, it's not fair to Matt Patricia either.
Right. I said the exact same thing earlier on I think it was on Sports Take or the National Football Show with Dan Silio. I think I was talking to either Rob or Celio, and I said the same thing. I said, look, it's terrible on both sides, right? You put this defense in a situation, in a lose-lose situation. You put the new pseudo coordinator in a lose-lose situation. What change did you really think was going to happen over the course of 4 weeks?
Yeah, that was a bad decision by Nick Sirianni, and I'm pretty amazed that I'm pretty amazed that people are calling for his firing, but I'm also amazed that if you are calling for his firing, at least focus on the right thing, because that was a bad decision by the head coach. The offense, and again, that's about expectations. They still finished number 8 overall. Now people want them to be better, and I get that, but that's still not bad.
You said he
and
panicked making that move from the side to Patricia. How much do you put on that? How much of it do you put on his inexperience at the position, and also the inexperience of facing adversity when you're dealing with a Super Bowl level roster like this?
You talking from Nick's perspective?
Yeah. From this perspective, making that move from Desai to Patricia, how much of that do you put on his inexperience at the head coaching level?
I mean, he's been around long enough to understand, and he probably does understand now it was a mistake.
I mean, we all defined it as a panic move.
I think, he talks a good game about not listening to outside noise, but he's admitted at times you do hear it. And I think the expectations weighed on this team. The talk about being 10-1 and being miserable, not enjoying wins, not having any fun. I think that was real. And I think the assumption was, and again, proven by the fact he was thinking about it at 8-1 during the bye week. I think those expectations seeped in, and it's like, we got to win. We got to win. We're not going to keep winning if we keep playing like this. That's the thing about the NFL. And I'm a perfect example of that today. When I left the air at 10 this morning, I was pretty confident the Eagles were going to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then I got down to practice and I saw what was going on in practice, and I'm not as confident. That's the thing. You don't have this in other sports because in basketball, well, if you play Wednesday, you might be back out there on Friday. You don't got time to stew in it. In baseball, you're back out there the next day. You don't got time to stew in it.
Mm-hmm.
Football's paralysis by analysis, man. You think about everything. Why do you think about everything? Because you have too much damn time to think about everything. And that's why Nick Sirianni's during the bye week, self-scouting 8-1. Oh, we gotta take the third down autonomy away from the defensive coordinator. You're 8-1. You're 8-1. I don't care. You don't do anything. But
hey, you bring up good points, John. And we can end it on this note. This team, some argue this was looming and it was only a matter of time. Some say just bad timing, fatigue, injuries. They'll get back on track. They'll flip the switch. We'll never know. We won't know until Monday. But overall, John, I appreciate you always taking the time out for the show, man. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys continue to stay engaged to all the content on JAKIB Sports. Make sure you're subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. You can check John out, not just here on Football 24/7, but you can also check him out Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern time with his partner in crime, Jody McDonald, on Burge 365, giving you all the information, all the latest details about your Philadelphia Eagles. So keep it locked. You guys were locked in on Football 24/7 with John McMullen, and I've been your host, Tone DeShields II, and we'll see you next time. Take care, you guys.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Mess & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on his shoulder. and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com.